morning, students. I hope you are really doing well today, and welcome to the PowerPoint presentation that is examination-based for 2021. This will be the one on the Diploma in Education for secondary education on life skills. So it's Life Skills 1. The subject code is DES LS12, and for Year 1, Semester 2. I am Sanmarie Steenkamp, and I am the tutor of this model. All right, so we're going to go through the outline of your study guide, and then I will also be discussing some topics underneath each of the units to prepare you for your assignments and also for the examinations. So the outline of your study guide is Unit 1 to 5, where Unit 1 is the National Syllabus Guidelines for Life Skills from grade 8 to 12. Unit 2 looks at factors involved in teaching life skills. Unit 3 at career aspects of life skills. Unit 4 teaching healthcare issues, and Unit 5 looking at the sexual issues that we need to teach in life skills. Okay, so I'm going to go through a little bit around what the study guide and what the subject is about. So when students are completing this module in life skills, they will be able, at the end of the studies, be able to examine the National Syllabus Guidelines for Life Skills for grades 8 to 12, explore the content about the teaching of study skills for grade 8 to 12, and also analyze the content about the teaching of career aspects, of healthcare issues, and also of sexuality aspects. When we look at your assignment that you need to do, there are certain things that will be expected from you when you do your assignment. It is important that you type or write only on one side of the page to make marking easier. If you use a computer, read through your work carefully to check for spelling and typing errors. Make sure that you staple separate pages of the assignment in the left top corner. This is very important that you number the questions and the subsections. Also number your pages. I get many assignments that don't have pages, and this causes a lot of confusion at times if the pages were not stapled in the right order. Make sure you write the title of the assignment on the cover and clearly write your name and subject code also on the cover. Do not staple different assignments together. Follow all the instructions of the assignments carefully. So this will be written on the cover page or added to the cover page of the assignment. Make sure you read through everything clearly before you start. Your assignment will have a cover page that's provided by IOL. You should make sure that you have a table of contents. Many times in the first year of doing studies, people don't put in table of contents. Make sure you have an introduction of your assignment, the assignment content, and then lastly also the conclusion. The biography or bibliography needs to be at the end of your assignment. If you used any sources beside the provided material study, or if you quoted the study material. This is also important because it relates to plagiarism. Plagiarism is something that we experience every year, where students simply copy and paste the content, the answer from their study guide straight into their assignment. Please read through in the beginning of your study guide. There are penalties for plagiarism. It is considered a crime. So when you copy and paste, either from the internet, either from another book, or from your study guide, it will be considered plagiarism. So please make sure that you have clarity on what it is and how not to plagiarize. So when it comes to the examinations, you have this presentation that takes place now. Make sure you familiarize yourself with the entire content of your study guide, because the presentation is time limited. It will not be covering everything in your study guide. So certain aspects will be taken out, but make sure you read through the study guide. Be very clear on what the questions ask in the examination as well as in your assignment. We use different verbs and they go towards different levels of thinking. So understand what it means when we ask to explain, to criticize, to list, to summarize, all of those verbs which are in the beginning front pages of your study guide. If you do not answer what is asked, you will be penalized. So this is where the copy and paste comes in your study guide. If you do that, you did not explain or criticize or list. It looks different when you do your answers. Write clearly. Marking is done holistically, and what we mean by that is if your answer is not precisely as it is in the study guide, but it makes sense, then you will still get marks for that. All right, because things, especially with life skills, it's a very broad subject and it can include many things that are not necessarily in your study guide but still relevant. All right, so we're going to move on to Unit 1. And there we will be looking at the rationale behind having life skills as a subject for grades 8 to 12. So when we look at life skills, it is a subject that intends to enable learners to find meaning in life. The intention of the program is to focus on the development of the learners through a holistic approach. In other words, life skills curriculum is based very much on holistic education. While it is realized that the development of learners will continue, one is expected to have the following outcomes with the life skills program in grade 8. So learners are expected to have a very clear idea of what their identity is. They will be able to apply their knowledge in decision making, be able to function effectively, be socially responsible, and have basic career knowledge. As a cross-curricular subject, life skills contributes to the learner's self-image and promotes values such as cooperation, tolerance, respect for others' cultures and possessions, and it also allows for a new way of understanding crucial importance of sustaining our environment. In other words, it also shows interdependence of environmental sustainability and political, moral, social, and economic demands through a study of cross-curricular issues. The main cross-curricular issues that are integrated through the curriculum in all phases are HIV and AIDS, human rights and democracy, population education, as well as information technology. The approach to teaching and learning is based on the paradigm of interactive learner-centered education, as described and prescribed by the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture. The aim is to develop the skills, attitudes, and learning with understanding for learners, and learners learn best when they are actively involved in the classroom and in the learning process. So teachers need to have the skill to be able to identify the needs of the learners. In that way, you will be able to allow the learners to learn what they need to learn, to work on their experiences and build on it, and provide them with the best teaching materials and giving classes in the best way that suits the learner. We move on to certain methods of assessment that you have in all subjects. So we have informal and formal methods of assessment. The informal way is more based on observation of the learner's learning process, where you observe how they investigate, how they interpret, how they can apply the information that they have learned, how they communicate with their fellow learners and with you, and how they make value judgments, and also in respect to their general participation in the classroom. In the formal sense of assessment, this can include tasks and activities that have specifically been designed to look at the learner's performance on these tasks, and also performance in projects and tasks that will be selected, graded, and recorded. In other words, the teacher chooses which type of tasks they want to assess. also guided by the syllabus though. Right, so there are 10 assessment objectives that we use in life skills. In other words, to participate, to demonstrate self-confidence, self-discipline, how the learner listen and respond, how they can demonstrate creativity in their work and express themselves very clearly. Also, the way that they, or abilities that they develop for problem-solving skills, as well as decision-making, how they display goal-seeking behavior, as well as self-knowledge. We move on to Unit 2, so the factors involved in teaching skills. And here we're going to look a little bit at the socio-economic and educational barriers to motivational attitudes towards learning. So we will look at the things that prevent a learner from having the motivation to learn in school. So the willingness of a learner to learn is dependent on their level of motivation. If a person is not motivated, then they won't be willing to learn more. So Maslow's hierarchy of school needs, a learner has to show 5 essential needs that must be met in order for them to feel fully motivated. So when we look at the hierarchy of school needs there, we will see that physiology is at the bottom. So that would be your needs that you have in terms of food, of health, in general. Water. The second one is safety. Do you have a safe place in which you stay? That's home environment and school environment. Number 3 is love and belonging. Is the learner being cared for, supported for? And 4 and 5, we look at the person's self-esteem and then self-actualization. So it's work from the bottom up in order for us to know that learners receive what they need in order to learn. So we're still talking about motivation. Motivation can happen in 2 different ways. You get the intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. The main focus or aspect of intrinsic motivation is to do something because you enjoy it, whereas extrinsic motivation, you do something because you will get a reward from someone or from something. Intrinsic motivation is where a learner engages in an activity because of their own will and cause. Extrinsic is where a learner will feel pressured to act in a certain way to elicit a response like a monetary reward or passing a grade. Intrinsic motivation is more likely to occur when the motivation is not warranted by a reward, where extrinsic motivation is more likely to occur when there is punishment or threats involved, either by teachers or by parents. We move on to the basic rules to follow to avoid failure and to have succeed or success. So for learners to feel successful or to reach a level of feeling success, they have to be their own advocate. They have to be able to ask a lot of questions, communicate their struggles to their teachers, and think of school as their office in training. They have to dress for success and take care of themselves. So being clean, hygiene is important for a person to feel good about themselves, and at least do the minimum so that they aren't creating gaps that are harder to breach later. So general guidelines for a more positive self-esteem. This is how you can teach learners if they want to foster a positive self-esteem. It's important to be on time for everything. Time really is an issue for most of us. So one of the main things to start with is to make sure that you are on time for class, for school, for meetings, anything where you have to be involved in. To be clean, we just spoke about that. To say only supportive things to yourself. We are very critical about ourselves. So if learners can learn to talk to themselves in a positive way, that will also build a positive self-esteem. To be able to keep their conscience clean, to take responsibility for their actions and choices, and to forgive themselves and as well as others, and also to put their desires in writing. So journaling is a very good exercise that one can use here with the learners to help them to learn to journal their feelings and journal their goals and desires for the future. We move on to study skills. So one of the study skills that you will find in your study guide is called SQ3R. So this acronym stands for Survey, Question, Read, Recite, and Review. When we look at these letters of the acronym, survey means to scan through the text and pay attention to the layout, chapters, sections, graphs, pictures, highlights, and words. So this is mainly a scanning exercise that you do when you start studying. The second step that you take is the Q, which is for questioning. There you ask yourself questions about the text. Ask yourself what you already know that you have read and what the goal would be for you in terms of the things that you don't already know, things that you don't understand. The last three aspects in this acronym is 3R, which means it's for the 3 R's: read, recite, and review. Read the text actively while keeping the previous steps in the back of your mind. Write down additional questions that you might have on things that you don't know or that you are not familiar with. Reciting means to repeat, and it's good to do that out loud, in your own words, what you have read, so that you have a clear understanding of what you have read. Review means to read all the relevant parts again, so you have identified the relevant parts, and go through your notes and questions again. Pay extra attention to those parts that you find difficult. So this is a very simple and easy way of study skills that you can teach to your learners. We look at 4 important ways in which learners can improve their study skills, and that is by focusing on what they are doing to gather information on the topic that they are studying, remembering, and that comes with reciting and repeating, and organize the information. And everybody will have a different way in which they organize the information. So learners need to learn what and know themselves in terms of how they will organize the information that they are learning, because we all remember and take in information in different ways. We move on to Unit 3, where we are going to look at the characteristics and competencies that employers look for in modern employees. So when we look at this, we will see that when an employer looks at a person that they will possibly employ, they would like to have that person show a certain level of intelligence. They should be honest, they should have the skills to do the job, they should have work ethic, which means that they do work as it is prescribed and not by own choice. They should be flexible, they should have determination as well as the working abilities required from them. In terms of job shadowing, the following things needs to be remembered when learners take part in job shadowing. So they have to prepare in advance for questions to be asked during the job shadowing. They have to be punctual, and dress appropriately. Be attentive and observe as much as possible. They should not be shy to ask questions. And for that, they can make use of the interview sheet that you will find inside of your study guide. It's also go with the first point, where you have to prepare in advance for questions that you would like to ask the person under which you're doing the job shadowing. Follow the job shadowing up with a letter of thanks, and write your report on the shadowing experience as soon as possible after you have completed your time doing job shadowing. When we look at career planning, there is a process that is involved. for a learner to figure out which direction they will go in when they complete school. So number one is to know themselves, to find out about where they are now, where they want to go in the future, and how they are going to get there. The second one is to become an investigator, to find out what this exploring what the occupations are that you are interested in, and what occupations or directions you learn best in. The third step is to make a decision, in other words, to compare your options, narrowing it down, your choices, and thinking about what suits you best at this point of time. So last point or last step that needs to be taken is to take action, and here you plan the steps you need to take to put your plan into action. Use all that you have learned about your skills, interests, and values together, and with this information you will be able to know which direction you should go in next. Right, Unit 4, we're going to look at the healthcare issues, and here specifically at the benefits of exercise. So benefits of physical appearance will normally improve one's self-confidence. Exercise improves the mental health and mood of a person. So it also has to do with the release of hormones in the brain called norepinephrine. It's a big word. And this also leaves the brain feeling mentally strong and alert. Cardio-based exercises create new brain cells, which also contributes to an increased brain performance. Creativity is also stimulated through exercise, and one gym session can lead to 2 hours of focused brain activity after a workout. Exercise shows improvement in relationships, overall happiness, and elimination of feelings of depression and anxiety. It reduces stress through the increasing endorphins, which we call the happy hormones. So the importance of exercise cannot be underestimated. Now we look at something that's not so nice, and that would be the long-term effects of smoking and alcohol abuse when they are used together. So this would be over several years. We can look at the increased risk of cancer, especially mouth cancer and esophageal cancer. So esophageal cancer has to do with this part after you follow your smoot, your esophageal goes down to your stomach. There's an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. In other words, your heart can be affected by smoking and drinking of alcohol. In terms of fertility and pregnancy, there might be a risk of fetal alcohol syndrome to the baby if a person is pregnant, which can lead to some defects of your baby as well. For men, there might be erectile dysfunction, wrinkles. Person's face gets more wrinkles more faster, so you look older than you are. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, and cirrhosis of the liver. In other words, your liver will not be able to function well anymore. Cirrhosis is when the liver hardens from a certain point. And the healing of cirrhosis takes a very long time, and it also creates complications with the rest of the body, as the liver is the part that releases toxins from the body. Okay, we move on to emotional growth and the importance of emotional growth for learners and for people, all learners and people. So through this experience, we learn to tame and harness our emotions where necessary so that we can function adequately in society. So it's important to grow emotionally, especially during the adolescence years and young adulthood. It's extremely important to work on one's emotional maturity. So it's the ability of a person to be able to express their opinions and thoughts without considering the impact that, when we're not growing emotionally, we might be expressing opinions and thoughts too easily without considering what it will do to another person. So that can lead to a lot of stress, strain, and hurt for both the emotionally immature person and those around them. We move on to how young people can deal with peer pressure when it comes to drinking and smoking. And we know that peer pressure can either be positive or negative. When it comes to smoking and drinking, and especially in adolescence, peer pressure is a common experience for most young people, and they are easily influenced by their peers that they have around them. Peer pressure occurs when somebody tries to convince another person to do something that they don't really want to do, but they feel they have to do it to fit into the group, and also for them to become socially acceptable among their peers. So we look at a few terms when we come to Unit 5 in terms of sexual issues. So this whole unit revolves around sex and sexuality. Some of the terms involved there that we need to be aware of is gender. So gender refers to the characteristics, the roles, ideas, the values and attitudes that a person might have because they are male or female. When we look specifically at gender and gender identity goes towards how you feel inside. Do you see yourself as male or female or somewhere in between? When we look at gender roles are those roles that are prescribed to us by society. So it's the way that we believe a man or a woman should be, which might not necessarily fit with your personal belief. When we look at sexuality, that would refer to the way in which a person views themselves as a man or a woman. Right. So that has more to do with biology. We look also at the word celibacy. Celibacy is a decision that a person can make to abstain or refrain from sexual activities. Anybody can decide to be celibate, and it's not a permanent condition. So a person who decides to be celibate may decide to become sexually active again. We look at terms like sexually transmitted diseases and infections, in other words, STDs or STIs. That means it is diseases that are transmitted from person to person through sexual contact. It can be through oral sex, anal sex, or vaginal sex. They affect men and women of all backgrounds, and if you have been sexually active, then you may be at risk of having an STD or an STI. Lastly, we're going to look at the purpose of sex. So the purpose of sex is multifaceted. There is not just one purpose to sex, and it has been made complicated over the years. Something that is intended to be really beautiful or fascinating has led in many ways to broken homes, marriages, and people. So there are three main purposes of sex, and the one is to build relationship, to become intimate with your partner and strengthen your relationship. The other one is for procreation, in other words, to have babies, and the last one is for pleasure. Right, so some reasons that we can look at why children tend to enter into sexual acts at a younger age is that they have their period, specifically now girls have their period early, they have little value for education, they have poor parenting modules or an absent father, they do not attend church or are not part of a religious affiliation, they have friends who are having sex. I think one of the other important factors that is not mentioned in your study guide but is still needs to be considered, one of the reasons is that many life skills teachers do not teach sexual comprehensive education, which is mainly as a result of their own religious beliefs, who might go against it, or because they find it extremely uncomfortable. However, it is prescribed by the Ministry of Education, and when learners don't have the education around sex and sexuality. They might not know the risks involved, where the education may help them to not have sex immediately, but leave it for later when they are older. So it's also a preventative measure to teach them the risks. Possible health risks that women may follow when they do illegal abortions. As we know, in Namibia, abortions are still illegal, although there are actions being taken from many different stakeholders to make abortions legal, and it's mainly as a result of women doing illegal abortions and the health risks involved in that. So some of the risks that are involved are infertility, inflammation leading to pelvic inflammation disease, which can damage the pelvis, infections because of instruments that might be used that was not sterilized, perforation or tearing of the uterus from sharp objects, damage to the internal organs like the bladder and bowels, and damage to the cervix and lining to the uterus, and severe uncontrolled bleeding. If there are serious complications, then the girl or the young lady or woman might die. All right, so that would be the end of the presentation. Please do note that I've only touched on certain issues under these topics. Please go and read further on these topics under each unit to make sure that you have enough information for your assignments and for the examinations. I thank you and I wish you good luck.